This is where we have a meeting of the minds. This is where we have a coming together, a true form of communication. And obviously, during this one, you are particularly welcomed to put your questions in the question and answer box, because this is going to be the most interactive session for the day. Session 4, we call it Fete of the Minds, the role of intellectual property in the carnival industry. Particularly important as we use this year to basically get ready for the future. In this session, we welcome Derrick Lewis, marketing and event specialist and serial idea generator; Anya, Ayoung-Chee, fashion designer, social entrepreneur, and strategist; Colin, Greaves, head of PR, Digicel Trinidad and Tobago, and president of the BP Renegades; Perrot, blockchain technology specialist, will also be joining us in this one, and it will be moderated by Perrot, lecturer in law and intellectual property consultant. So we now get ready for the Fete of the Minds. Emma, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this final panel of the day. I think it's going to be a very exciting panel. One thing I just want to touch on before we really get into our discussion is a question that was asked by, I believe, Alexandra Ghani in the last panel that I know Mark had addressed. But looking at the question, I think what Alexandra is asking is about the risk of artists having their work uploaded without their permission as NFTs. And since we've been talking so much about NFTs, I would like to indicate that that is indeed a risk, because there is usually no verification process in a lot of these NFT platforms. In fact, it has happened and it has been reported that artists have had their work uploaded, minted, and sold as NFTs without the permission. So while there are many potential benefits of NFTs, I do think it's important to be aware of the disadvantages. But before we go into all this innovation that we've been talking about, I want Derrick to start us off and take us through the history of Carnival. So Derrick, you are somebody who's been in this industry for a long time. I don't want to give away your age, obviously, but I think you would have experienced certain changes over time. So you would be well positioned to tell us about, what have you seen change? What has the focus been? And how are you coping with these new developments?
Everyone hearing? Okay, so yeah, I've been around for a while, and I've always had ideas. That's one of the reasons that I'm here, probably. I've always tried to develop them and try to make them work for people. I think the difference between an idea and something that is a product or service people use is really the innovation. Innovation that takes you from the idea in the mind through working the idea so that it applies to someone wanting to use it or go there or do something. So I've always been in that space. I'll give a story. I had an idea reveal my age now, somewhere in the 90s or maybe 80s. I had an idea, and it came to me from a negative approach on something. It was some lemon. So I decided to do something about it. The name or the word idea was Island People and Island Style. I had two. And I wanted to know what to do with it. I started doing things, t-shirts, and getting it on memorabilia and, hats, and people were buying it. And then I decided, okay, people want to do more. So we have an event. At that point, about doing t-shirts with Island People, the brand, I realized I was going to school at that time in the US and in New York. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to register this. But I couldn't afford an attorney. Emma, I couldn't afford it. But I decided, let me make sure this is valuable to me. Let me appreciate it by registering it or doing something. So I started reading about trademarks. This is a long time ago, reading about trademarks and trying to figure out how do I do it, because I cannot afford an attorney. I decided to drive 400 and something miles to Washington, to the trademark office of the US, to register Island People and Island Style. And It was a personal journey. I borrowed money to buy gas and stuff like that and got down there because I thought it was important to register this trademark. I missed island style by 2 days. Someone from South Africa trademarked island style just 2 days before I reached to the trademark office with island people and island style. So I knew island style wasn't for me if it was 2 days, but island people became something that I was able to utilize and innovate with and eventually evolve into quite a few things. So just giving you that context as to I was inspired by this a long time ago. And so to be a part of this and to be a part of actually co-producer, co-developer of this concept, Ideas emPowered, is where I want to be now so that a generation of people who can really push it forward can take it forward. And that's what I want to contribute. Some of the historic context and some of the things that I'm doing.
All right, thank you, Derrick. So Derrick, you've obviously been one of the people who have recognized the value of intellectual property, maybe before others have. And in fact, while we talk a lot about intellectual property now, it is in no way a new concept. For those of you who were in the masterclass this morning, you would have had a very insightful event on intellectual property. Personally, I am a consultant in intellectual property. I'm also a faculty of law lecturer at UWI. I did my PhD in intellectual property, so I am very passionate about it. And I'm sure other creatives in this chat as well understand the value of intellectual property and how we need to protect this value, especially as we are in this new normal world. And Carnival is very much a globalized concept now. So we're straddling the line between globalization, the need to generate revenue, as well as the need to make sure the revenue is going to the source from which this creativity is coming. And I'm going to ask Anya about her experience in the field in Carnival. We all know Anya as her excellence in design, and I would like to hear, Anya, about projects you've been doing recently and how you have innovated in this area recently.
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me. Nice to see all of you. I'm sorry I was a little late. I, as a fashion designer, obviously IP is something that is a bit of a struggle. It's really hard to to own a design, but certainly, particularly, and it's wonderful to be on the panel with Mark because we have been doing a lot of work together over the last year with my relatively new brand, Wildflower, and getting into the world of NFTs has helped, not necessarily in particular, with IP of fashion design. I think that will, if it hasn't evolved already, it will continue to evolve. But the smart contract aspect of the NFTs is really, really powerful for creatives. Part of the issue with IP, I think, as a designer or as any creative, is not only that it's sort of inaccessible financially, like Derrick was mentioning, with having to hire very experienced lawyers like you, but the entire process is onerous, just like any other thing in business. As a smaller entity, it's the mountains and mountains of paperwork and follow-ups and all the stuff you have to do. It's like, it's not the most enjoyable part of being a creative. So we generally avoid it. I mean, myself included. So I think what we've been doing, not necessarily specifically because of the IP stuff, but Mark and I, his company Zed Labs, and my company Wildflower have come together to develop a technology aspect of the brand, which is multifaceted. Because of Mark's guidance, I've been able to learn a lot about the possibilities with NFTs, as well as the metaverse and digital fashion. And we have other collaborators too, Creator Labs and a variety of other artistic collaborators. So I can show you a little bit about that. But yeah, it's been super exciting. We have a lot planned, and Mark is like my guru in this area. I've learned so much from him. And a huge part of it has just also been the fact that the space is genuinely, authentically collaborative. It's sort of like a complete shift in culture from what I think we are accustomed to in this region, unfortunately, where everybody kind of keeps, their goods and their wares close to their chest. And this is the complete opposite. It's breaking down all those barriers, sharing, like sharing to the point of a very new way of doing things, which is what has gotten, I think, Wildflower really quite far in a very short space of time. So I think it'll be great actually if Mark shared a little bit from his perspective, but I don't want to confuse the flow of things. But yeah, that's where we're at.
Do I jump in or is that? Yeah, I think it's
Sorry
actually
about that.
really
My
interesting.
internet just stuck a little bit. But you continue, Mark. You continue.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's it's very interesting, like going in with the topic of IP and then talking to Anya about it, and like it's actually a very different world when you go into not only the technology space but the blockchain space because of the radical transparency behind it. You go into technology, you'll be able to, like, one of the most popular applications out there is a completely open source application, and you can pull down the code, you can run it, and you can go and launch your own version of that application out there. And it's a very, very interesting way of approaching things, because this openness allows you to build a community around your brand and sharing ideas and just vibrant conversations, and people just start gravitating towards it. And that's what helps build your brand, and that's what helps validate the source of all information or the source of all value. And in a way, that's kind of the protectionism around your, like, what is known as IP, or your vision or your mission of the products that you do launch. So approaching that in a blockchain world or in a technology world is very different from the traditional sense that we are all used to, especially around, like, especially around your brand, the name of your company, and different things like that. So luckily, with what we've been doing with Anya, she's really, like, just letting us, like, run with the vision and being right there along the way as the creative guru. I think whatever Anya touches turns to gold, and she's really honed in on the vision behind how to launch a blockchain product, how to build a community, how to bring people in, and how to, like, financially empower and financially include people who, you know, who maybe don't have a voice, but now they do, thanks to something like Wildflower.
Well, Mark, I love this collaboration between you and Anya. And as she had said, you are really the person behind the blockchain aspect and the NFT aspect of Wildflower. And I see a question in our chat that I'm hoping maybe you can share some information on, or some advice. So Chrislyn Lashington asked, as a creative making content that is mostly for the Caribbean diaspora, I'm concerned about how viable this market is. Do we know the potential size of the market now and in the future among Caribbean people globally? So I assume she is asking here about the viability of NFTs in the marketplace, and probably against the context of what Dr. Gudema said this morning, that the wealth generated is often concentrated in a few hands. Is it that perhaps market research has been done to indicate that the wealth is going to be more greatly spread? Or you tell me, Mark, because you are the expert on this. I'm sure Chrislyn will benefit from the information you have to share.
Definitely. So just a note, when you launch a product on a certain platforms, let's say OpenSea, for example, which is one of the most popular NFT platforms, you're launching it into a global market. And there never before has there been such unprecedented access to a financial system. The ability for someone to go from zero to having a cryptocurrency, the barriers to get there are way less than it is to get access to a bank account or PayPal or one of these other wallets or, like, the financial platforms. And that being said, when you do launch a Caribbean project, you're launching it still into a global world. And yes, in cryptocurrency, there is concentrations of wealth from, you know, people who have started very early in the industry. But the way that cryptocurrency works is, if you have a lot of it, to gain more, you are still relatively in the same position to acquire more than a new person coming in, because of things like mining and staking and the ability to earn rewards and stuff like that. That could get very philosophical. But the point is, there is a massive economy around people buying into creatives products, like around NFTs. So people buying everything from digital dresses to digital wearables to paintings, videos, songs, you name it. And when you launch a Caribbean-based product, you are going into a multi-billion market of people who just have to do 2 clicks to purchase your product. So I think that's a way to look at it, is that you're no longer like launching in the American market and going towards like US cardholders. You're not like limited to distribution throughout China or Africa, Europe. You're going straight into the global realm. And I hope that answers the question. If you can let me know if there's anything.
Let's have a follow-up on that, Mark. So I understand what you're saying in that it is going into the global realm, but as we saw this morning, the NFT is usually just the metadata that's being sold with the file. Is it that in the Wildflower collection, you are attaching a physical object to be sold alongside the NFT, or is the NFT the metadata that is the traditional form that we are aware of NFTs? So are you also selling inside the NFT, or are those two separate?
If I understood the question correctly, is it like, are you selling the NFT, or are you selling the a physical thing with the NFT? So NFTs,
yes, that's correct.
They come in different shapes and sizes. So, and Anya could probably attest to this or jump in and state anything else. So there's different utilities behind NFTs. So if you were to take Anya's digital dress, for example, it is the metadata behind the NFT that is put in the actual, on the blockchain itself. But the ability for you to then use that NFT, let's say the digital dress. The reason why you'd want the digital dress is to go in Decentraland and then show your uniqueness in this digital world where people are walking around in virtual reality and checking out different spaces, having conversations with people, buying NFT art. And in that way, you can dress yourself. And then to be unique or to be an individual, what you can do is be like, yeah, well, I'm from the Caribbean. I want to buy Anya's dress and I want to be the only one to use it in Decentraland. So in Decentraland, if you are the owner of the NFT, only in Decentraland, which is the platform that has the most users and the ecosystem and the communities, will it allow you to wear that one digital dress that you own. So the utility of the NFT itself is in the digital realm for that dress. And that's the utility behind it. And then also with the Rodell NFT, which Anya could talk to, we did mix in a hybrid of, you get this NFT, there's a few perks that come with it, and then there's also something physical that you can take from it.
Yeah, I can maybe, if it helps, I can show some of it, because it might help bring more of a visual to all the.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Anya if you could show us. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, right, and then Colin, I didn't forget you. I'll be coming to you after.
I'll quickly do this. And I did tell Derrick that, you know, the video that I'm going to show, it's a little bit racy, but basically, you know, Wildflower is a festival wear brand inspired by Trinidad Carnival and Burning Man. So the clothes are like festival inspired, but they're for everyday life. So this is the launch we did in New York.
Live your life better, live it to the fullest. Live your life better, live it to the fullest. Live your life better, live it to the fullest. Live your life, cause you don't know when you just might go. Better go with the flow, fast lane, never slow. So I say, live your life to the fullest. From the bottom to the top, everybody go.
So as Mark mentioned, we did these NFTs that were a collaboration between 5 different artists: the photographer Marlon James, the models, of course, Rodell Warner, who's a digital artist, Gemini, who is the videographer, and Safia Alena, who is my brand manager, but also did the styling and composites. So these are the digital wearables that we mentioned, worn in Decentraland and made by Creator Labs. And as you can see here, this was a very, very collaborative project. All the different musicians, Naomi Cohen and Walshy Fire, they did the sound on the Rodell NFTs. All the people I just mentioned, and of course, these are all our sort of more technology collaborators at Labs, of course, Christian Saloom, Creator Labs, and Andrew McIntosh. And, you know, it just shows how collaborative, like I said, this entire world is. And so I think particularly the wearables, which I'll go back to here, you know, give you a sense of, in reality, what these NFTs, and these don't actually have to be NFTs, but we would choose to sell them as NFTs because we can add more value to the ownership of that token. So you can wear it, like we said, in Decentraland or any of the metaverse worlds. But in our case, what we plan to do, and we actually have a consignment shop in Decentraland Fashion Week coming up with a UK company called Boson Protocol. So we're going to be selling both the wearables and the physical items. So it's, you know, decentralized commerce that allows for this to happen in tandem, which we feel is very exciting. There are people who just only want to sell digital fashion, but I think both is important. And like going back to these ones, the idea with these NFTs was that they would eventually become something that owning these tokens gives you more and more access to other perks, other utilities that are really mostly designed for the wild tribe, which is our growing community of people who are very interested in what we're developing. So I don't know if that helps. I mean, I'm just trying to give a little bit more actual tangible context to what we've been
I think that
developing.
definitely makes it clear, Anya. I think seeing what you've done, it makes it really clear to understand the goal of this project. I absolutely love that you have married the digital world and the physical world. So you can have this NFT that you can wear in the digital world, but at the same time, you mentioned that you'll tie some exclusive benefits so that in the physical world, you have this interaction as well. So I think that's a really cool project that you're able to get this merger of these benefits. And I love the collaboration. And as one collaboration, it's one thing that we know takes collaboration is to pull off a good pan performance. And I want Colin to tell us now about the excellent work he's been doing with the BP Renegades, because Colin has expertise in this area in terms of this is really a band that has been able to reach an international audience. And Colin, I'd like you to tell us about how you have been so successful in this realm, as well as the challenges that you face or challenges that you think need to be overcome to really maximize the potential of Steel Band.
Those are two very big questions there. Thank you so much. And hi, everyone. It was great to be here and share and exchange ideas. So let me start by saying anybody who's ever worked with a steel band kind of would share the same sentiment of it's a pretty difficult task, you know, and it's not just the idea of you managing a band of musicians or managing music and rehearsals and all of the things and instruments and stuff, but the culture side of things. And of course, there's a transition happening where we all know the steel band history of where the instrument would have started with fighting and riots and a particular type of mindset. And now moving into 2022, where bands are trying to be more business oriented and focused on marketing and producing and sharing their performances and stuff with the world. There's this junction right now where we are, and we're figuring out at the crossroad of where the culture side, of course, is now competing with, interacting with the commercialization side of things. And many bands tend to stay on the first side, the culture side of the importance of a steel band, the importance of it for society and culture and stuff. And there are a few bands, I would say, that have really jumped into the commercial side of things, of packaging their performances, packaging their bands, touring the world, securing international booking agents, being on international platforms, recording, putting recordings out there. Once upon a time, it was about making a pan CD. Now it's about getting music on Spotify and iTunes and the music and all the different platforms that exist. So there are a lot of different things that are happening there. So if I was to fast forward and just say at BP Renegades, for instance, we've done, I think, a pretty good job at kind of managing both, where we still have very strong cultural and community-based roots. So a lot of the players from within the band come from within the community, and we do a lot of community-based activities still. However, we also have moved toward the realm of having international touring and booking agents touring every single year except 2021. But even right before the pandemic started in 2020, the band would have done 17 sold-out shows in France. So when Renegades tours the world, we literally only perform to sold-out audiences. And when I mean sold-out, I'm talking our tours in France last year were like 117,000 tickets. So I'm also talking very big shows in the world's leading concert halls and collaborations that we've been doing out there. And where we are right now is the juncture of packaging this even more, making specific recordings. So I love what Anya and Mark are doing. And I see Mark as a Fatima boy. Good job. So on that realm of seeing what they're doing with the NFTs and stuff and figuring out, okay, how do we now monetize this in the digital space? It's the exact same thing of where Steel Pan is moving to. We would have recently been collaborating with the Big Five Committee, International Steel Band Foundation, conversations with Ainsworth Mohammed, Nigel Williams, Tony Chowlin, and a lot of people just to figure out, you know, what we can do or how we can work together to record music in a way that it would be a lot more palatable, marketable, easily accessible across multiple digital platforms. One of the things that we've deliberately even looked at is the format of how we do the songs. So for instance, traditionally, an 8-minute panorama song would be the benchmark for Pan. But then on the bigger scale, we're like, you know, maybe that's not the best tool to market an international audience because they're unfamiliar with the song. It's very much arranged and complex pieces of music. It's Trinidad Calypso music. Many of them may not be exposed to it. So we started breaking it down and saying, all right, let's start doing shorter form songs, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, things that are more easily digestible, simplifying some of the music we put out there. Of course, we still maintain having the complexity of the panorama songs and a very heavy 8-minute arrangements and stuff. But we are deliberately also looking at the different markets around the world and the type of music we record so that we can position it there and get the music out on these digital platforms so that every time somebody streams a song in Africa or China or Sweden or Switzerland or all the places that we go to, 15 years from now, there's still some earning potential from that. So those are just some of the big item things that we've been working on. I mean, in addition to that, there's also a lot of merchandising and a couple of steps behind Anya and Mark, though, of doing Pan merchandise. So anybody out there knows that a big thing for Steel Pans are Steel Pan jerseys. Everybody always talks about your t-shirt. Every single year, bands do new t-shirts and new uniforms. And we would easily sell 3,000-4,000 t-shirts in a carnival season. So there's a big market for that. And of course, the pandemic has forced us all to look at, okay, we no longer have big crowds of the audience coming to the Panya to hear the band, but they're still online. They're still all over the world. We've been recording music remotely. There's a song that we did last year, Heal the World, where we did the music score, sent through our arranger, Duvon Stewart, sent it out to our players all around the world and had everybody record their piece. So we kind of give them instructions of how we wanted the format, all of that stuff. And we collaborated from about 8 or 9 different countries, from Japan, the US, the UK, Caribbean Islands, Trinidad, all playing different parts of the song, different parts of the instrument. We just put it all together, created a video, put it out there, was able to get people to put things, to share it on in-flight videos with Caribbean Airlines. It went all over the place. And yes, Anya, we were definitely open to digital t-shirts for performances and stuff like that. Because the reality is, what we are trying to do and what we have shown at BP Renegades is that there is a huge market internationally for Trinbagonian branded products and services. People love our culture. It's so expressive and vibrant and fun and colorful and energetic and raunchy and all of these things all in one, that when we're able to deliberately take that, package it, and find the audiences, I mean, just so you guys know, this current period here, Renegades actually was supposed to be in France. We canceled an appearance at an international festival of Fall Journée, where we would have been from January 19th to February 1st. And that would have just been one of our annual tours where we would go and perform for 100,000 people, multiple venues, all sold out. And we're like, now exploring the opportunities of getting to these markets, putting the online and merchandise on online store where people could shop online. I mean, once upon a time was a matter of investing heavily and buying a bunch of t-shirts, printing them and wondering, oh, would these sell? No, we're doing basically customized where we have the graphic or the design. You buy a t-shirt in Japan, we get the t-shirt printed in Japan and just have it shipped to you there. It's you know, there's so many ways to get around and to maximize how how we achieve efficiencies and profitability and the commercial value of what we do, while still keeping the essence of being Trinbagonian and the music and the energy and the vibe that we put out there. Correct. So I hope that was a big, nice summary there.
Colin, it sounds like BP Renegades is a real leader in this area as the things you should be doing. So you are making sure that the music is accessible through legitimate streaming platforms, which means the royalties generated will be going to the correct people. You are making sure merchandise is available to expand your fan base. It seems like you're doing everything in a very formalistic manner to protect the culture and ensure that the revenue goes towards that. But I do wonder, have you had any kind of pushback in terms of, you all obviously very serious about the way you conduct your business, as you should be, to ensure you have longevity. But do you think that this formal approach is something that is easily accepted within the pan community?
Well, many bands out there look at us as shining examples. So the BP Renegades, I would say, are within the top 5 most successful bands in the country, not only on a competition level, but in terms of operationally, how we've managed to maintain a band of over 70 years and different things like that. Again, I go back to my opening statement of, you have a challenge of the culture side of things in terms of the grassroots culture and how it formed and came from the community, and a band leader would be a bad John long time or a bad boy in the community and that kind of thing, which evolved into their son, their cousin, the lady who owned the parlor in the corner kind of thing. And the realities that we have had to face is that when you now start to evolve into the business and the commercial side of things, many people have very limited resources and experience and know-how of to take it to the next level. Of course, aspirationally, everybody wants to get their band there. Everybody wants to be a big band and have a big panyard and big branding and all of that stuff. But in terms of the expertise, because as you can imagine, the expertise usually would come from within the bands. So many bands just don't have the experience, the know-how, the human resource development and capital. And from on the Renegade side, I would say having a corporate sponsor in BPTT over the last 52 years has definitely been a really big asset, because they did a lot of work on training up the human resource element within the band. So when we come out there and we tell the players, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, it's all about professionalism, being polished, putting out, having a brand and identifiable marks and trademarks and logos and stuff, our members get it. Many other bands are still in the process of understanding it. And we are often willing to work with them and to give advice and stuff like that. But it's a work in progress for the industry as a whole.
That's really good to know, Colin. And I know all of you would have had the experience of approaching sponsors, and approaching sponsors is something that is necessary, right? To ensure that we have this longevity, there is an undeniable financial need. So we want to preserve the culture, but we need money to do that. All of you are obviously very much professionals in your field. I mean, Derrick was aware of this trademark, the need for the trademark very early in the game. Is there any advice you all can give to people who are following, who, let's say have an idea or have something they'd like to execute, but they're not sure how to approach a sponsor? What type of advice would you give the listeners?
Well, Emma, I would say if someone has an idea, it would be probably a funding agency to get it off to the next level. But if you have an idea, the first thing you have to do is actually value it and bring it to the level that it becomes something that's more tangible and more usable. Or in the case of an NFT, it becomes something that is more, it's not mining in an NFT, but more, it has to be able to be created as something that someone sees value in, because ideas don't have value. So if you have an idea and a concept, it would be to protect it first, right? And then improve its value by innovating, then take it to someone to either fund or sponsor, because so many people have ideas, and before it's actually created into a usable form, they actually share it, and it becomes, I think, it may be in the NFT world and in the new world that Anya and Mark speaks about, it may be beautifully developed. The other side of it, which I'm bringing to the table, is that you should do some type of security trademarking or some type of security marks to own it apart from it. So there's a traditional and also a digital opportunity for people. So before going to a sponsor, yes, do this.
Okay, Colin, can we hear from you? And then we'll hear from Anya and Mark next.
Okay, so I'm going to take off my BP Renegades hat. I'm going to put on my Digicel head of PR and communications hat and state that, when I first started at Digicel, my job actually, I was the event sponsorship and marketing communications executive, right? So I managed and approved all of Digicel sponsorships for a couple of years. And I would say that many people have great ideas, as Derrick rightfully said. We get proposals and stuff, and then you start to delve into the idea and you realize that the person really just had an idea. It's not fleshed out properly and stuff like that. Of course, when you look at a sponsorship of being a brand buying the right to associate their name with your product or idea, the risk factor is there for us that we have to, of course, look into how is this going to affect our brand? What is the alignment? Who's involved? How is it going to look? Which market is there? And we found that many times you would ask these very basic questions of people and they really just don't know. So Derrick was spot on when he said you really need to understand your brand, your product, your target market, what's your intended outcome and your roadmap to get there. What's your entire strategy encompassing? In addition to that, one of the main reasons I would say that sponsorships would have been denied at Digicel, for instance, from one reason or another, would tend to be two things that kind of go hand in hand that make one: brand alignment and timing. So many times there are companies that are interested in different things. There are companies that like fashion, for instance. There are companies that deal with social causes and feeding children and clothing and shelter. And there are other companies that deal with entertainment. There are companies that deal with alcohol, that deal with soft drinks. Many times I find that people waste resources by doing a scattershot approach. Let me just send something to everybody. Because what that then means is that you don't really have enough time to properly delve and meet and build a relationship with that sponsor, have meetings, follow up with information, really build a relationship with them that would ultimately benefit both parties. And on the flip side, where I say they come together is also the timing factor. Many people start to submit proposals for sponsorship way too late. I mean, companies, people have asked for $500,000 or $1 million for a project, and the project is 3 weeks away. It's like, that that could never work. When you think about it, so for instance, I can tell you from now that our budgeting period has already started, ended, and been signed off for the next financial year from April. So April, May, and June, we already have commitments and we know what we're working on. We know what we're working on. We have projects already slotted in for the August and September period of this year. But you have an event that's 3 weeks away and you have not submitted a proposal as yet. I mean, things like that, you kind of disqualify yourself. So when you don't do your research to understand where a brand is going, their focus, right now at Digicel, for instance, we're very much into the digital realm with our suite of apps. So we've been focusing on sponsoring content creators to a large extent. So people who are generating content, whether it be video content that could go on our Playgo platform, podcasts that go on our Go Loud, music playlists and different things like that. We get some proposals that speak directly to those things. And think about it, when a brand has something in front of them and you're able to use the buzz terms that they're looking at, it's like, great, you're making the sponsorship manager's job so much easier because they don't have to now go and try to look for a project to align the brand with. You literally just bring it and put it in their laps. So I think the research, timeliness, making sure that it's properly aligned to the brand's focus. These things are all really big factors of what gets sponsored from a particular brand and what doesn't.
Thank you very much, Colin. That's really useful. And then to add into our, current climate, I think something that would be important, Colin, is to know, is Carnival 2023 going to proceed? But none of us here can answer that question. But Anya and Mark, I'd love to hear your perspective as well on this approaching sponsors before we wrap up.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'll just speak sponsorship. I have to, like Colin, put on another hat. Back to my, sort of past of particularly doing parties, and I did have a fractional of amount of experience compared to Derrick. But in terms of funding for events, like I think Colin sort of nailed it, just like making sure there's alignment between the sponsor and the event, or whoever that target market is. It was always much easier for me with my events to be able to raise money along the lines of making sure that the audience that this was for was directly aligned with the sponsorship. And it never really works when that's an inauthentic alignment. You know, everybody knows that it's sort of like seeing a social media influencer advertising something that clearly they do not use, you know, then people don't have buy-in, you know. But my more recent line of work and the work Mark and I are doing together, sort of the parallel to sponsorship is funding and grant funding in particular. And I think there are a lot of similarities to what Colin just shared, of how we can source that kind of funding for the kind of work we're doing, because I think that really it happens most organically and most successfully when which is what I think Mark and I have been doing, you know, well, if I may say so myself, is being sort of a conduit. All we are is just a conduit. Like, there's the audience in the community over here who are in need of support, and there's the bodies that have funding over here. And because we have alignments on, you know, creating that channel, it happens relatively, not easily. I mean, it takes a lot of work. It's another system that requires some disruption. But I think that it happens, I guess, is the point, you know. And I think, you know, we just applied for the Career grant together, and you know, we don't know how that's going to turn out, but I think we can safely say that, particularly because we're very focused, both of our entities, on social impact, on financial inclusion, in my case particularly for women, but we have a lot of alignments in terms of those values, and I think that that's what's causing quite a bit of influx of interest. And it works best when you're not trying too hard, because you're authentically showing up as a channel towards the service of a community. And I think that I'd love to hear Mark's perspective on that, but that's where I sit as it pertains to that funding aspect.
Yeah, I think Anya and Colin really well said. Colin gave like so much insight in there. It's definitely just to build off of what he said. And what Anya is saying is mission alignment. I've oftentimes just been on the receiving end of sponsorship, and what I often find is the easiest way to do things is, like, for example, we had a hackathon focused on gender-based violence in the public transport industry. So what we did is we found brands that were aligned with that. So technology brands that wanted to get into the space. And then, you know, surprisingly, Stag, a man's day, you know, like, was a part of the sponsorship, because it really wanted to change the initiative around the brand, and not be so patriarchal, or like not be so male focused, especially because of what's happening, you know, in this day and age. So, like, even just thinking about what initiatives you're pushing and the brands that you can appeal to, and just being aligned with what their maybe new initiatives are, what's the things that are on the forefront. Look into their social media branding to see what brand you can align with, and if it fits the thing that you're doing at the time. Colin said it really well. You have to have the things in place to show that it is legitimate. So we had our website, we had a date, we had, you know, a bunch of formats and guidelines as to like how to sign up. We had a bunch of emails from people who signed up already. So just being as legitimate as possible and very mission aligned. And then finding out what different aspects of the thing that you're doing can fit another company. Like, we approached some American company recently because we're doing another hackathon that helps people launch websites easily. And we said, okay, cool, we're gonna do a 1-hour tutorial to help people launch websites easily. But I know you guys do it really well, so let's like pair up and we can get you distribution in the Caribbean. So just think about how you can really be creative with your approach to brands and what value you're bringing to them, and if it aligns with it. That was
really
more
great.
practical.
That makes perfect sense. And what I love is that we were able to hear from both people who will give sponsorship and people who are seeking sponsorship. So we can see that both the people who are willing to give sponsorship as well as the people who are seeking sponsorship are very clear that you have to be organized. You can't just have an idea. You have to make that idea something that's concrete. You have to organize it. And in fact, if anyone has questions on that, I would tell you to put it in the Q&A box, please. And we will address them as they arise, because we do have a bit more time. We actually have about 10 minutes because of the later start, which I've just been informed of. So we have some more time to take your questions. And as we're on this topic of organization and whatnot and getting sponsorship and everything, the next big thing is really how do we bring forward the Carnival experience in the metaverse. Now, I'm not saying it as a replacement or anything like that, because personally, I hope to be on the road someday again. But the reality is not everybody can travel every year for Carnival. We have a large diaspora who I'm sure enjoy participating in some virtual form. And I also think that if we can continue with some kind of digital aspect, it will also attract more people to come to the physical celebrations. So I think, Anya, I'll direct this question to you first. What do you think this concept of having Carnival in the metaverse? Is it a viable idea? What do you think about it in general?
Yeah, I mean, as you already mentioned, it's a bit of a divisive topic. There are definitely people who don't want to hear anything about it. And then there are people who are like all in, which I would put myself in that category. We've all actually, Derrick, Mark, and I have been parts of a creative tech lab that was held earlier last year, talking specifically about the potential for virtual carnivals. So there's a lot of this conversation, and of course, you probably saw that St. Vincent announced that they will be the first island with a metaverse carnival. So I think it's an inevitability. I think also to your point, Emma, it's important, in my opinion, to not assume that one replaces the other. I think that could hold back a lot of progress because one could never replace the other. Certainly the digital experience cannot replace the in-person experience. Like Colin and I were talking about yesterday, there's just nothing that feels like being in the midst of Pan, embedded in the vibration of a panyard. Like we shouldn't try to replicate that. We shouldn't try to replicate that incredible feeling I remember at Insomnia as the sun rises. Like that is not replicable. But I think there are aspects to the metaverse experience that are different and equally sensual, sort of sensory experiences, but certainly different. And to your point, Emma, as well, I think, in fact, I would imagine that doing a carnival in the metaverse or any sort of carnival product will appeal to the vast audience of people that I feel Wildflower is actually targeted to, people who love festivals. Festival culture is global and huge. And whether or not that's a Caribbean festival or it's a more sort of American EDM festival, there is a bit of a through line of the culture of festivals that I think is a huge market for the Caribbean product. I think thinking of it with a very global perspective and not necessarily putting it in a box as being a Caribbean product only is important. I think assessing what does the non-Caribbean festival goer go to festivals for. It's a huge part of what I've been researching for the Wildflower brand, because I deliberately wanted the Wildflower fashion product to fit a festival goer who happens to maybe also like Carnival in the Caribbean, but that's not mandatory, So I think the possibilities of expanding our cultural products through the lens of the metaverse are infinite. I think the possibilities of creating communities outside of the Caribbean community that start to fall in love with our version of this product, it's again an inevitability. And whether or not we should do it and should we do it soon, 100%, I'm the type of person who just wants to start and figure it out as we go along, rather than wait till it's all figured out. And this is a world I've learned through Mark and other collaborators. You don't wait, because if you wait a year from now, 2 years from now, 6 months from now, 3 months from now, even, it's completely changed, and we would have lost the opportunity to be part of the making of what it's becoming. And that's the uniqueness of this opportunity. Oftentimes in the Caribbean, we get in the game when the system is already built. But we're in a moment right now where we could be participating. We are participating in what these worlds look like. How do they operate? What are the functionalities? How does our Caribbean culture infuse not only in the look and feel, but also the functioning, the design of the system itself? We are naturally that way to design communities. And why don't we get involved in that from day one? So that's my position.
Anya, I have no doubt that you'll be at the forefront for any of these types of developments. I mean, you are basically already in the space in terms of the NFTs, the wearables. I mean, that sequin monokini you showed looks like an excellent Monday way option for those who will be one day participating in this type of event. And I think it is important to recognize that venturing into this space is not a replacement for the physical. Many of us hope to get back to the physical in a safe manner whenever that is possible. But we cannot deny that there are opportunities out there to spread the culture even further, entice people to learn about Carnival and to hopefully participate in real life one day as well. I think it can also be great for the diaspora who can't necessarily afford to come to every event, every carnival, but they can still get a taste of home in a way that, you know, preserves the culture and expands it. And Derrick, I'd like to have one last word from you. I know this is a topic you could talk about for a very long time, but I'm going to give you 2 minutes, Derrick, to say what you think on the future of Carnival as it relates to the metaverse.
Well, I have had the great opportunity to work with a few people in this space, and I'm seeing it as a future, but it's a parallel future, meaning the physical is not going anywhere, and that's just an experience. But there's a generation that's coming right now that is actually, they see themselves as being in that space when they are online. So for me, there are a couple people already there, and Carnival is already in the metaverse. You know, I had a great opportunity to work in the CTL labs, thanks to the IDB, with and mentor and actually work on projects with someone who has, his name is Digicel, and he has, I think it's called Discover Carnival VR, which is, it's a metaverse experience for Carnival. It's an attempt and a movement towards and an attempt to build out something in that area. So I think there are things already happening. I think calling it the metaverse is almost like a brand has come to something, but people are already in the space creating things online. I mean, Mark had created Moko Jambi, or it was a Midnight Robber?
Mark created a Perrot.
A Perrot. Mark created a Perrot who came up with rhymes, and if you had to work the rhyme out online, and in a metaverse you would pay to actually go against or try to match his experiences or make up his words. You can win, you can lose, or you can just be having an entertainment opportunity. So for me, we're already there. It's just for Trinidad, Tobago and the wider Caribbean to invest in the parallel opportunity that is the metaverse, not the replacement. We have a kind of way of going, it's either bikini and beads and, you know, or traditional mask. And I've always been right down the center. We can have both, and we can have the metaverse and we can have our carnival at the same time and be successful in delivering one that contributes to the other. Because when we get out there to the entire world on the metaverse of Carnival and people are playing Moko Jumbis from Australia, they're going to want to come to Trinidad for the real experience. So it is a funnel more than it is something to be against or for. It is a funnel, another opportunity, and a bigger opportunity. So I'd love to leave with that.
I think that's a great note to end on, Derrick. Thank you all for your contributions today. I think if it's one thing I would like to highlight, is what we have all learned from the different proceedings today. So we've heard about the digital world, we've heard about the physical world, and whether you're straddling the border between those both or your feet are firmly planted in one or the other, there is a serious need to make sure that you are organized, your intellectual property is protected, and while there might be some barriers in terms of costs and whatnot, it is something that you should be looking at in your long-term strategy. If you want to be successful, you have to get these things secured. If you're approaching sponsors, they will want to see what plans you have, or what steps have you taken, and what steps do you intend to take once that sponsorship is secured. So I think it was a very helpful day. We've all learned a lot. I hope that the audience found it useful. I must thank our excellent panelists for today, all who gave their wealth of experience and knowledge. It was very interesting for me as well, coming in from coming at it from the legal perspective to hear how things work on the ground, what steps are needed, and where we see the future going. I think while we all hope to be on the road, once again, that the digital opportunities are undeniable, but if we want to maximize them, we have to embrace them, not as a replacement, but as a parallel universe, as Derrick told us. And of course, we want to make sure our intellectual property is secured for whichever realm we decide we want to play our mass in next year. So thank you very much, everyone, and I will now hand it back to the host.
Thank you very much, Emma, and thank each and every one of you for being part of it. We want to say thank you to all of our panelists that have been with us throughout the entire day and making it all possible. We want to say a special thank you going out to our feature speaker, Dr. Andres Gudamos. Thank you so much for being part of it. And y'all, we learned so much today. This was Ideas Empowered, a masterclass on identifying, protecting, valuing, and earning from our creative assets in our evolving creative economy. I'm Hans Devines, and we say thank you to our partners, Trinidad and Tobago Intellectual Property Office, Modcom, Quantum Business Solutions, CarniCon, and we also want to say thank you to the others that made it possible, the Communications Department of the Attorney General Office, Media 21, Anthony Burnley, Khalil Mohammed, and Eventology, Trinidad and Tobago. So we know y'all are very interested in the recordings, and we want you to know that the recordings will be available and distributed very soon to your email inboxes. Thank you very much, and continue to be safe.